and welcome to this very special episode where we bring you the best of the World Economic Forum 2026 from Davos, where the weather has been icy, but the conversations have been red hot. This has been a standout year for several reasons, and the biggest one among them is that it has seen the World Economic Forum as a platform regain its position as a meeting point for global thinkers. It's also regained its prominence at a point where there is dialogue between differing partners. The theme this year was a spirit of dialogue, and when we started off the World Economic Forum, it almost seemed ironical. No one was talking to each other. But then this is the platform where you had Trump, you had Macron, you had Mike Carney, you had the European Union, you had the Californian governor who was speaking out against Trump, the biggest names in business, global tech, and all of these players finally finding one place to speak to each other. Does this mean that after the end of the World Economic Forum, all of the problems in the world are resolved? Definitely not. But a dialogue has definitely begun, and that really is the biggest takeaway. If I were to describe the World Economic Forum 2026 Davos in three words, those three words would be Trump, Trump, and Trump. Right from the get-go, the excitement about the US president coming in, the number of posts that he was putting out even before he came in guns blazing, so to speak. He leaked a message that the French head, Macron, sent him, already promised additional 10% tariffs on European nations, was aggressive about Greenland, and on the day that he was coming, there was a lot of speculation whether there would be a delay, a snag in his plane, but he did start exactly on time. The 1.5-hour speech pulled no punches. There were attacks across the board and gasps in the audience, while many of the victims of what he was saying were sitting right in front of him. But at the end of it, he did take back those additional 10% tariffs. He did say he would not use force in Greenland, and he said he wanted to start a negotiation on acquiring Greenland. So all things considered, the end of it was better than perhaps what was hoped for.
It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States. I love Europe and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. Venezuela has been an amazing place for so many years, but then they went bad with their policies. 20 years ago it was a great country, and now it's got problems, but we're helping them. And those 50 million barrels, we're going to be splitting up with them, and they'll be making more money. They've made it a long time. Venezuela's going to do fantastically well.
Why does Trump want Greenland?
I wish I knew. Why does Trump want his name on things? Why does Trump want the Kennedy Center to be called the Trump Kennedy Center? Why is he so desperate to have a Nobel Peace Prize? Why does he put his name? I mean, historically, his life has been, and his greatest success has been about promoting his brand. It's been about how, Trump, even on things he doesn't own, he wants them to be named Trump, and he gains some benefit from that. You and I speak for myself, I would not feel any particular growth in self-worth from having my name on something I didn't do anything for. But Trump doesn't feel that way. And so for Trump, being able to own Greenland, and he's seen it on the map, and it looks a lot bigger with the Mercator projection than it really is, he wants to say it's his.
NDTV Profit was the first to get you breaking news from Davos as well. We told you there would be Indian business leaders who would be meeting with Trump after his address. We gave you the timing, we gave you the names. 7 top leaders did meet Trump. They were handshakes, and we had conversations with a few of them after. But remember, there are thousands of delegates and business leaders here in Davos. Not everyone had an opportunity to meet Trump, and not everyone, or maybe not anyone, could speak their mind. We spoke to a host of people, and we asked them, what is that one line you would say to Trump, or the question you would pose? Listen in. Have an opportunity to say one thing to President Trump, what would that be?
I would urge him to try and find an understanding with Europe about Greenland.
Mr. President, a lot of what you're doing actually is helping the US economy. You have an opportunity to make that net wider.
But actually, India loves the US.
A lot of the countries around the world look up to US. I think a bit of a stability and...
Take a break.
I think there's just too many changes happening too quickly, too sometimes randomly, which is, I think, creating a bit of a chaos.
India and the US are really completely aligned with each other and need to work together.
That will be a golden opportunity for him, and I'm sure he would then deserve the Nobel Peace Prize.
The World Economic Forum 2026 coverage has been a special one for Team NDTV as well. One of our largest contingents were here with our top anchors and editors breaking down every event from every angle. We had a star lineup of speakers as well. It's rare to see on an Indian channel the head of the IMF and the World Bank on one platform. You had the head of IBM, top ministerial voices, and so much more coming in. This was the place to tune in to catch the global voice and their thoughts on India.
What do you think is going right with India at the moment? Its economics, its growth. What do you think is going wrong? What more would you like?
I mean, the growth is amazing. As you know, in the last couple of years, the world economy has outperformed what everybody expected. One of those is clearly the US has outperformed. A number of factors for that, including the AI investment, but also I think global supply chains were much more resilient than the tariff story. Back to my tariff point, which is why you've noticed I said, don't think of it that way, think of it another way. Global supply chains turned out to be more resilient than people thought. And therefore, the US stock market, the US investment situation is actually pretty good. Now, China and India have also outperformed. India is clearly a market growing at 7.5% to 8%. I mean, honestly, nobody thought that 2 to 3 years ago. And that's pretty good in this environment. So China is doing a little under 5. Again, no one thought that would be possible in this environment. So these 3 kinds of large places have driven a lot of growth. However, there is also another aspect, which is that in a number of economies post-COVID, in the emerging markets, almost a fourth of them are today at 10% below the per capita GDP of pre-COVID. That, Rahul, is the two-speed issue that we've got to keep in mind, right? And I think that two-speed issue applies in a country as diverse as India. It also applies across parts of India, but India on the whole is in the right side of that, while other countries have bigger challenges there. So economic growth, to me, you guys are doing well. I think what you have to think about...
You guys or we guys?
Yeah, I'm now an American citizen of Indian origin.
Dil to aapka kahan pe?
Dil to yahi hai in many places. I have multiple dils. Now I'm a global multilateralist. So everybody asks me, tera dil kahan hai? And I say, jam hai, wahan pe dil ho. Aaj dil Switzerland mein hai. Kal dil Bhubaneswar mein hoga. You know, that kind of thing. So I think you've done very well, all the jokes aside.
What do you think is not
What I
good?
think what you can do more, and we've got a very interesting country partnership framework. The way we work with the country is called that. We've got a new one being drawn up with the help of the finance ministry and with the PM's active involvement. I'm going to try and discuss it with him when I'm in Delhi. Hopefully we can get it out of our board by then. And there are three main focus areas. Rural prosperity, because I think it's really important to not rely on urbanization as the only engine of economic growth. I think getting small farmers in India to be proud of who they are and get them a chance to get access to productivity and scale through the cooperative system. People made a lot of my statement when I launched our agri-tech effort of the success of Anand and Amul. I grew up in that era. Sure. I saw Amul transform India from a desperately milk-short country to one of the largest milk producers in the world. I saw in that the power of working together in a good way, in a commercial way, not in a monopolistic way. And I think there is a story there, which is the same story I saw in UP with Yogi Ji and in other such places. I'm going to see it in Bhubaneswar when I'm there in a few days. It is a story not just of one or two places. I think that getting rural prosperity right is another big injection of growth for India. The second one is what is going on in the urban areas can be done even better. Better urban planning, as you know, cleaner air, water, municipal financing. These are all good things. I was meeting with the Chief Minister of Maharashtra here. I told him Maharashtra is gifted with 4 or 5 cities that are actually profitable enterprises in their own right. Mumbai, obviously, everybody knows. But Nagpur, Chinchwad, these are all Nasik. So is there something that we could do, which our expertise in municipal financing, to enable these municipalities to access bond markets, reduce reliance on public money, increase reliance on private money, and drive a multiple change in the way these cities can grow for the future? Then the state can put its resources on those cities that are not as well off as these 4 or 5. So you kind of divert your attention in that form. So to me, urban regeneration done the right way is another good opportunity. What you've done is fantastic. What you could do is the next leg. And the third one is focusing on this whole engine of job creation. That's the demographics I was talking about. India is producing 10, 12, 14 million young people every year. Some of them are getting formal employment. Some of them are going back into informal employment. Others are becoming gig workers. Others are going back to their farms to work. It's good. But I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to do more with this? And in our jobs panel, which is chaired by the president of Singapore, Tharman, a number of CEOs, Chandra is a participant, so we've got a whole active participation there. We know that there are 5 sectors which could be very interesting, all of which apply to India. Infrastructure, it's construction, but then what it enables. You guys are doing an amazing job on roads, ports, and so on. Digitization, DPI, so power, there's more to do. Second, human infrastructure, so healthcare, primary healthcare, again, something you're focused on. There's much more to be done there still. India is a very large country. Delivering primary healthcare in a country of that size with that kind of dispersal of population is tough. We have committed to do $9 billion a year, plus another $5 billion of private mobilization in public primary healthcare over the coming years. I think we can be helpful. Third is tourism. India has done work on tourism, but India's share of global tourism is paltry compared to India's amazing opportunity. Khana chahiye, wahan hai. History chahiye, wahan hai. Science chahiye, wahan hai. Colors chahiye, wahan hai. Log aur masti chahiye, wahan hai. Beaches chahiye, wahan hai. Mountains chahiye, wahan hai. You tell me what you don't have. And so the question is, can we be even more ambitious about tourism in the coming 30 years than the past 20 years? Huge job generator. In fact, tourism is the single largest multiplier effect of jobs created to dollars invested in any industry.
But I suppose, Geeta, the first question to ask you is Donald Trump. The world stands at a crossroads. Your thoughts?
I think we are at multiple crossroads, and it's unclear which of them, which direction in which we will turn. What is really quite stark is the rupture between the US and Europe.
It is, and it affects markets around the world. We saw that yesterday. The FTSE suffered, markets in India suffered as well. So that's where the uncertainty is also going to be felt.
You know, the one place that has not had a crisis in the last many years, despite pandemic, war in Europe, the Fed raising interest rates, was the markets. I mean, you had ups and downs, but the governments always came in to save the day, central banks always came in to save the day. So that's the shoe that could drop, which is that we may be in a situation, given how stretched valuations are, all kinds of risky assets, look very stretched at this moment, globally, that we could end up with triggering a correction of meaningful consequence. That's not just a up and down situation, but that keeps going down for a while.
What does the potential end of NATO mean?
It's huge. I mean, that would be the end of global security as we know it. The whole NATO alliance was critical to the post-Second World War order. And, if that were to disrupt and there were internal conflicts, I think, it's complicated. It feels like an unsafe world.
So tariffs versus counter tariffs. Trump has said if you don't back my Greenland plans, there's 10% tariffs, it'll go up to 20%. And some European nations are saying that they're going to tariff back. I mean, it's almost an absurd situation right now. If there is a tariff war between the major European countries and America, what does that mean?
I think that would be another April 2nd. If you remember what happened April 2nd when you had the whole Liberation Day tariffs, markets really started tanking. And between 2nd and 5th was when they put a pause on it. The reason that President Trump put a pause on the tariffs was because something was going to break in markets. I mean, bond markets were struggling, stock markets were struggling across the board. So if we were in a true tit-for-tat war between the U.S. and all its allies, we would see another event like April 2nd. Now, the good news maybe is that would be a disciplining factor and would lead to a rollback, because that's what we've seen in the past. Yeah. But that's what we're talking about.
Is India a haven of stability in this present unpredictability all around us?
India is certainly doing well. I mean, its growth rate is supposed to be 7.3%.
Yeah, it's gone up. It's been revised upwards, yeah.
Exactly, by the IMF. I think that's very good. It's benefiting also from ongoing reforms in the country, good weather, the monsoons help always with rural consumption. So I think that is certain. But India is not completely insulated from events that are happening externally. The tariffs that are now one of the highest being put on India right now, India's been able to divert a bunch of goods to other countries. That's not going to be, you cannot keep doing that for a very long time. So hopefully there will be a trade deal with the U.S. too. Yeah. But to the extent that India has a very large domestic market, that helps insulate it to some extent.
A lot of the work that you focus on now is on the health of children. And it's been a constant concern for you that we as countries, people around the world, are under investing when it comes to the health of children. Going forward, in terms of your own investments, in terms of your own programs, and if we can talk perhaps about India, how do you believe the health of children needs to be looked at much more closely?
Well, the progress since the Gates Foundation was started in the year 2000 has been nothing short of miraculous. Half as many children die today as died at the turn of the century, and India has been a significant part of that. And our partnership with the Indian government to say, okay, let's add new vaccines, or let's add digital systems to track the inventory and the hiring, and make sure that the primary healthcare system, as the economy grows and you put more resource into it, that it's constantly improving. Obviously the digital system Aadhaar is helping the entire Indian economy, but we see that particularly in the health sector, that there's a lot less paperwork, and people understand what their health status is. So in the same way that we've worked with India these last 25 years for this next phase where AI will come in and play a big role, I would expect that the most exciting pioneer work, a lot of that will come out of India. And so I'm optimistic that we can cut childhood death in half again over the next 20 years, getting it below 2.5 million a year.
It's interesting that you mentioned Aadhaar. That is very much our digital backbone. We've got something called DigiLocker as well, so it's a safe place to secure, to have your details. Is that a model that you believe can be replicated elsewhere, something like Aadhaar?
Absolutely. So, philanthropists like Donna Neelan-Connie and the Gates Foundation are funding work at places like IIT Delhi to provide software and tailor it so that it'll work for all the countries of the world. And so, for example, in Africa, we have dozens of countries now that are taking the identity system, which that open source thing is called MOSIP, but it's basically a implementable form of Aadhaar for them. And they're thrilled that India led the way, proved that it's working, and that's a big contribution to help those governments gain the efficiencies that India has seen.
AI is obviously a great opportunity, but also a big concern. How does AI help in terms of some of the development projects that you are interested in, whether it's with farmers or it's with education? And every time I speak to you, AI has evolved. So while you talk about the good things, what are some of the things that concern you?
Well, first, let's start with the good things. AI, as you say, keeps getting better. And so the idea that in education we can create a tutor that knows how to motivate you and knows what you know and what you still need to learn. In agriculture, we should be able to give better advice to a poor smallholder than even, the rich farmers getting today, because the weather and the prices and the varieties and the soil, we'll build systems that know that, which there's been some pilot work for that already in India. Finally, in health, this idea there's never going to be enough doctors for all your health needs, including mental health needs. So having a virtual doctor that in your local language you can consult and, it's free to you. And so it helps you know when to go to the health system and, gets rid of the paperwork there. It's very, very promising. And so when I go to the AI summit...
Yes, that's a big announcement. Mr. Gates is going to be in India soon, middle of next month.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Modi's made this a big priority. And I'm thrilled that I and the Gates Foundation across the board will be there because, we think the commitment of the government to use AI for citizens, including in the health sector, will not only help India, it'll help the entire world.
For a lot of our viewers watching and looking at this also from the lens of their investments, the horizon, etc., where does India stand in all of this?
See, I think it depends, right? India as a market is already huge, fourth largest economy, growing larger. I think people are recognizing the criticality, but it's not today. I mean, today, if you're a global player, you could ignore India, right? I think when you see what's happening in Asia, you see a pivot away from some of the Asian countries like China. The Japanese did this very early. A lot of our investments coming in, whether it's that bullet train from Bombay to Delhi, many others, the Japanese did that because they didn't want all their eggs in one basket. It was a diversification. Likewise, when you see the global funds, given there have been very few exits out of China, a lot of that money is now flowing into not just India, but into Japan, India, and Australia, as far as Asia is concerned. I think India remains a phenomenal source of entrepreneurs, of manpower. I mean, not just the tech companies globally, whether it's Satya, whether it's all the other tech companies, whether it's IBM or Google, but it's also now in consumer. You had Lakshman heading Starbucks, you have Lena heading Chanel. That was so as a source of talent, but is huge already, and it will remain huge. We're a seventh of the world population, so both as a source of talent and a market. The market, I think, given where our population curve is, was in the early years of it, and that's only bound to increase. So, but I don't think any one company is dependent on India. But increasingly, even while the private investors have moved to India, increasingly the global strategics will look at India, whether it's Bombardier with aircraft, whether it's an Embraer, and so on and so forth.
So what are the red-hot sectors or spaces that you find interesting, Manish? Do you think, you talked about some of the investments which have really done well, Lenskart, etc. Do you think it's tapped out, or there are many more companies like that to discover, and which sectors are they in?
Listen, if you look at where we are as a country, we're at the tip of that iceberg, right? And no matter how good we've had it in the last 15 years, remember when I came back to India in the late 90s, there was no product called mortgage. You had to have full check, full cash, and buy a house. We own a mortgage company, which we built for 7 years.
We finally sold it recently to another private equity player. But the market penetration is so low right now that even though you fight for market share, the size of the market, we're at literally the tip of the eye. So the best is yet to come. I mean, look at asset management, mutual fund industry. What was the AUM 10 years ago? What is it today? What it could be 10 years from now, which is the beauty, right? The market in financial services as a proxy to the rest of the economy is huge. Vishal, when we took it over, or Lenskart, when we invested in it, it's a fourfold growth in between 6 and 7 years. And again, you're at the tip of the iceberg. So I think if I step back, what you need is extremely strong management teams to capture the opportunity, right? And secondly, how do you deal with systems that are challenging the old, with the Blinkits and Zeptos? Today, a Nykaa competing with a traditional mom and pop, or a Purple competing with Nykaa and other cosmetic companies. You need to be smart on how to play both the offline and online spaces. But in terms of consumer demand, there is no end.
So let's squeeze it down. 3 interesting ideas.
3 ideas.
Yeah.
Then if I give you those 3 ideas, what does my team do next year?
Give our viewers something, Manish.
Let's get it this way, right? We love financial services. I think financial services are a proxy for a country's economy. If a country is growing, let's say, at a certain, let's say 20% growth, the financial services in that country will grow at a certain multiple of that, at a 30 or 35%, right? Okay. So if you think India is going to have a 7 or 8% secular growth rate, financial services will grow by 15. Almost half of our investments were in financial services, primarily in lending only. Increasingly, we're doing non-lending, so insurance, asset management, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with consumer space. The 2 others that we're spending a lot of time now, it's about building up a skill set. One was around tech services, not the classic IT, Infosys like old world stuff. I'm sure they're doing lots of new stuff. And again, we don't want to end up competing with the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. So instead of jumping into and investing in what I call the gold mine, you invest in the shovels. So we recently took a controlling stake in a company called Impetus. What does that do? It does, before a company can be truly AI ready, it needs its entire data to be organized properly. This is what the company does.
Okay.
So you've got to think through, AI is a huge animal. Do we want to play in that animal? So is it going to be huge? Yes. What is our chances then of winning in that space when you're competing with the best in the world? And India, as we all know, is slightly behind the curve on AI. So then what do? You look at a market which is attractive. Maybe it's in the India-US corridor. You look at your labor arbitrage, you look at your skill sets, and so on and so forth. So I think going forward, I didn't want to skirt around your question, financial service and consumer will remain huge. Tech services will increasingly increase, and it's also not as highly prized as consumer is in India. And finally, both healthcare and healthcare services.
The Indian contingent's presence in Davos and on the promenade was a key talking point. As you walked along and you saw the Indian flags flying over Hotel Europe, there was a sense of pride. Across the street, there was Kumar, of course, making his samosas and pakoras. The takeover in that sense was complete. But it wasn't only Indian states that you would see. The who's who of corporate India has been present in Davos, and the pool was even wider this year. We caught up with the biggest voices here, from IT to auto to services across the board. They were all represented on the NDTV platform. In terms of what you are looking at here in Davos, a little birdie tells me that a lot of your conversations are around AI and adding that kind of tech to the prowess of State Bank of India. Are you shopping here, speaking to possible partners?
No, we do have partners and, of course, long-term partners. More importantly, my conversations with them is for the last 3 to 4 versions of Davos, we've been talking about AI. A lot of proof of concepts have happened, and we have not seen adoption of AI in the BFSI space at scale. So my venture here is to understand how do we bring AI adoption at scale as big as State Bank of India with 530 million customer base, that you need to have something which will change the customer experience and also improve the productivity of our employees. I think this is what I've been focusing on. But what I believe now is that a lot of entities have moved away from POCs to adoption. And adoption also has a critical element in the sense that you need to have large-scale change management, the way how people use both of your employees as well as the customers. So this has been my focus. It's been a good conversation so far.
How do you see AI changing both the customer experience and your core requirement of financial inclusion? As India's largest bank and largest public sector bank, that's also a big part of the mission. How do you think that this can really change the game from that context?
So it's not that we have not used AI in the past, but we are talking obviously now moving from the predictive analytics to Gen AI and agentic AI. So we were one of the early adopters of AI models, both for purpose of the customer service, lending, for instance, and also fraud risk management. If you really see cyber protection of our customers, where transaction monitoring happens, and also we need to protect them from the cyber frauds. A large-scale Gen AI adoption is happening in SBI on the fraud risk management side. But we can definitely use in terms of creating hyper-personalization. Today, a lot of people receive a lot of calls on many products, right? How do we cut down on them? What Tamanna really requires, only those calls should go.
I think all Indians will thank you if this is a model everyone can
I think
adopt.
definitely this is what AI is capable of doing, in the sense that you don't disturb or you don't trouble the customer as much because you have not understood the customer much. If AI tools can provide that insight in terms of what customer needs and when does he or she wants to be contacted for. I think these are some of the things on the customer side. But more in terms of the customer protection side, I think agentic AI and AI have humongous applications going forward.
I think this is a great time to also speak about India's place in the world. And I see massive representation. Of course, you are a Davos veteran, a white badge holder. But this time round, the number of Indian companies that have come in, that is also a sign of India's growing resonance, isn't it?
Absolutely. India's presence in Davos is really felt. And there's so many state pavilions, as well as India Pavilion. And this is a very good sign. And there are lots of established companies who have been coming to Davos for years, as well as many young companies who have come now, startups and recently formed companies in high tech as well, and not just your traditional industries, which is a very good sign for India and India's place in the world.
The theme this year is a spirit of dialogue, and I'm sure you have a lot of interviews, conversations, meetings lined up on the sidelines as well of what's happening. To your mind, what's the biggest talking point right now?
I think there is a lot of polarization in the world, and dialogue is absolutely important. We need to find more and more middle ground, which can only be done through dialogue.
From the Indian perspective, we have the budget coming up. We're right in the middle of the quarterly results. And what corporate India is showing, perhaps in this quarter, is resilience. Do you see that trend continuing, especially from your sector and your perspective?
Yes, I see a lot of resilience. We have had a lot of geopolitical setbacks with high tariffs, etc. And obviously, the tariffs have caused pain to certain companies, but they don't seem to have affected the Indian economy as a whole. And the recent GST reforms, which were troublesome in the very short run because of the changeover, but now the benefits of the GST reforms are kicking in. And I'm really looking forward to other tax reforms in the budget that will help the economy. And I'm also looking forward to more government investment in the economy. We shouldn't be worried about the budget deficit. if it is calculated in a way so as to grow the economy, we shouldn't be worried about tax cuts, because many tax cuts can actually raise the revenue. We should look for tax cuts that help us raise revenue. And if we have a budget deficit, but the economy grows very fast, we can ensure that debt to GDP falls steadily.
What are some of the reforms that you're hoping for? You mentioned that, there should be more reforms coming in the budget. What are some of these?
I'm not going to say anything specific on specific kind of taxes, but the kind of reforms they did in the GST with lower taxes that actually increase GST revenue and help to grow the economy. I'm looking for opportunities like that. And I'm also looking for reforms towards ease of business. There's a lot has been done for ease of business, and the only reason our economy is growing is because of this, but much more can be done and should be done.
Absolutely. Last point. I'm asking this to everyone who I meet. If you have an opportunity to say one thing to President Trump while he's here, I don't know if you have a meeting or not, what would that be? Into the camera.
I would urge him to try and find an understanding with Europe about Greenland. Greenland is very open to him using Greenland's territory to defend the free world. And that will be a golden opportunity for him. And I'm sure he would then deserve the Nobel Peace Prize.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Godrej. Always a pleasure speaking with you. That is Mr. Nader Godrej at his very best.
What I love about the fact is that you're so out and about, trying to find out what's happening, wrapping your head around all the geopolitical issues. Donald Trump was here in Davos. What did you make of his speech? And you were among the few Indian businessmen who actually had an opportunity to be part of a meeting with him. How was that?
Predictable. I think everybody expected him to be going off script, and which he did. I think there's too much noise. And as Secretary Besant said, don't react to noise. Keep your calm. Things will get better. I believe that. In the end, U.S. is an important part of the world, one of the most economically powerful, militarily powerful nation. But it is still a democratic nation where if things go completely out of hand, things will start to come back. What is important is for the world to know the old world order has certainly shifted. Now, where will it land up? What new institutions will come through it? But something has to give now. Europe will have to come together as a voice. No more fragmented Europe and together through Brussels. It doesn't work. Have one voice. You can't have a situation where two leading heads of state have a strong reaction and two say, no, we must compromise. It doesn't work. Europe in the next 10 years would have made their own arrangements on defense, on security, on intelligence sharing, on satellites, GPS, but it will take 10 years. They have been, if I may say, Europe has been on a vacation. And when you come back from a vacation, you can either be very charged up to do things, or you can be in a lazy mode, not do much. What Trump has done is, I think, shake them up very hard. I think Europe is acting now.
Is there a method in the madness that you see, or do you only see madness?
There's a method. There's a method. Ask for the moon, settle for the stars.
Start by asking you what Trump was like in that business leaders meeting. Was it as fiery as his address on the World Economic Forum stage?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here in beautiful Davos. Nice blue skies, very calm and peaceful. We hope the world becomes like this as well as we go forward. With regard to your question for yesterday, it was clearly a privilege to be there. It was quite a group of CEOs. You could take the top 50 companies or the top 100 companies in the world, and most of the CEOs were there, including Tim Cook and Jensen Huang and Satya Nadella and a bunch of others. It was a good conversation. The speech was, I'd say, a fairly good one with business. Clearly not anywhere as close as fiery as the earlier one in the afternoon. But more than the speech, it was the interaction after that. And there were a few of us that did get a chance to shake hands with him, and I had a brief dialogue with him on the Mahindra Group as well, which was a good, positive dialogue from our standpoint. Just very friendly. I mentioned I was from the Mahindra Group, and he responded, good group, very good group, and he clearly knew about us. and said, we need more like you.
Dr. Anish, you and I have spoken in a car. Now we're speaking in the backdrop of the mountains. But some of the questions remain similar because you run a very large group which has a huge footprint on the Indian economy. And we're speaking a few days ahead of the union budget. What do you think is the kind of messaging which needs to come in, especially as the world is in this phase of uncertainty?
The Indian economy is in a very good shape right now. And the actions that have been taken by the government over the past 12 months, more so the acceleration over the past 6 months, have really put the economy even stronger than what it was. We are seeing tremendous demand across automobile, tractors, resorts, for a logistics business, for a real estate business. As you know, we operate in 70% of GDP for India, and we are seeing the economy in very, very strong shape. And I have gone on record saying that India will grow at 8% or 8 to 10% a year, possibly for the next 20 years. And we are seeing that happening at this point in time. So for us, it is stay the course. Continue to focus on capex, on infrastructure building, focus on the long term, which the last few budgets have. Continue to maintain fiscal discipline. And that's all that the economy needs at this point in time.
A big highlight of the Indian presence in Davos, apart from, of course, the Indian corporates, PE investors, and so much more, were the states of India. All of them here inking deals, creating new partnerships, and finding ways in a friendly, competitive manner to make their states shine. NDTV network caught up with some of the biggest ministers and voices from across Indian states.
I've got with me the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, देवेंद्र फडणवीस, जिन्होंने यहाँ पे साइनिंग की छड़ी लगाई. जब भी मैं आता हूँ आप किसी के साथ हाथ मिला रहे होते हो, कोई ना कोई MOU साइन हो रहे. जब से आप डावोस आए अब तक कितनी MOU साइन किया आपने?
मुझे अभी पूरा उसका आंकड़ा तो याद नहीं है, पर ऑलमोस्ट 85 MOUs हम लोगों ने यहाँ पर किए हैं और बहुत डाइवर्स फील्ड में किए हुए हैं और कुछ बहुत सुंदर स्ट्रैटेजिक MOUs हमने किए हैं जिसका बहुत लॉन्ग लास्टिंग इम्पैक्ट होने वाला है. तो मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सक्सेसफुल हमारा ये सारा टूर रहा है.
मुझे लग रहा है बहुत देर से अंदर ही इस कमरे के अंदर हो. आओ थोड़ा सा डावोस की हवा खा के आते हैं. मुंबई में भी आजकल थोड़ा सा कंस्ट्रक्शन के चक्कर में पोल्यूशन है, लेकिन आपके हिसाब से हाईलाइट क्या रही है आपकी? जो डावोस में आप आए हो, आपका ये डेलीगेशन लेके आए हो, what do you consider as the biggest highlight? हाँ,
तो बहुत ठंडी है.
अच्छा, वो जैकेट भी देखिए. रुकिए. जैकेट भी देखिए. जैकेट पे भी लिखा है बॉस. तो मतलब जैकेट को भी पता है कि महाराष्ट्र का बॉस कौन है. अच्छा, बताइए आपकी अब तक की डावोस की हाईलाइट आप किस चीज़ को मान रहे हो?
देखिए, मैं 2-3 चीज़ों को हाईलाइट मान रहा हूँ. विशेष रूप से कल हम लोगों ने एक यहाँ पर तीसरी मुंबई की फर्स्ट स्मार्ट सिटी को हम लोगों ने लॉन्च किया है और इसमें रायगढ़ पेंट करके ये स्मार्ट सिटी होगी. और ये जो स्मार्ट सिटी है ये एक नया बिजनेस डिस्ट्रिक्ट है. आप समझ लीजिए कि पिछले कई सालों से मुंबई को जिस प्रकार से BKC ने एक नई ऊंचाई दी है, अब ये समझ लीजिए कि एक नया BKC तैयार हो रहा है. और ये जो रायगढ़ पेंट स्मार्ट सिटी है ये इस प्रकार से हम डिज़ाइन कर रहे हैं कि जिसमें मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि न्यू एज इस प्रकार के बिजनेसेस आएंगे, वॉक टू वर्क वाले रहेंगे, न्यू एज मोबिलिटी इसमें होगी. और कल जब हमने लॉन्च किया तो जगह, एनवायरमेंटल क्लियरेंस, सारी चीज़ें हमने कर ली है. उसके बाद उसको लॉन्च किया है और ये पहला एक ऐसा मॉडल है कि जिसमें PPP में हमारा एक प्रकार से लैंड भी प्राइवेट पार्टी ला रही है. सो लैंड इज़ ऑल्सो कमिंग फ्रॉम द प्राइवेट पार्टी और MMRDA इसमें पार्टनर है. और कल इसमें USA, सिंगापुर, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, नीदरलैंड्स और UAE ऐसे 5 देशों से 1 लाख करोड़ की इन्वेस्टमेंट आई है. ये 5 देशों से. तो बिल्कुल ये एक नया शहर जो हमने तीसरी मुंबई का, उस तीसरी मुंबई का एक ये पहला शहर है. दूसरा, आपको याद होगा कि हमने पिछले डावोस में एक कॉन्सेप्ट फ्लोट किया था, इनोवेशन सिटी. क्योंकि हम लोग जानते हैं कि अब हम लोग 5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी पे जा रहे हैं, लेकिन 5 ट्रिलियन के बाद हम लोग इस स्पीड से आगे नहीं बढ़ना चाहते. हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी 5 ट्रिलियन से 10 ट्रिलियन, 10 से 20 ट्रिलियन जाना चाहते हैं, और उसके लिए आज की जो हमारी बिजनेस की पद्धति है उससे हम नहीं जा पाएंगे। उसके लिए हमको इनोवेशन लगेगा। इनोवेशन इज़ अ की जो हमको लीप फ्रॉग करेगी। इसलिए हम लोगों ने तय किया था कि हम एक इनोवेशन सिटी तैयार करेंगे न्यू मुंबई के पास, और आज सारे इंटरनेशनल ऑडियंस के सामने हमने उसको लॉन्च किया है। और स्पेशली वी हैव पार्टनर्ड विद टाटा सन्स, और इसका जो पूरा ये जो इनोवेशन सिटी है, इसका कॉन्सेप्ट जो है वो एन चंद्रा जो टाटा के प्रमुख है उन्होंने तैयार किया है। हम दुनिया की एक ऐसी इनोवेशन इकोसिस्टम यहाँ लाना चाहते हैं कि जो इकोसिस्टम एक प्रकार से प्लग एंड प्ले की दृष्टि से सारे टाइप के इनोवेशंस को ड्राइव करेगी। यानी एक प्रकार से दुनिया में किसी को लगे, किसी बिजनेस को, कि मुझे इनोवेशन में जाना है तो ही शुड कम हियर, इस प्रकार से। और आज ही उसमें डेटा सेंटर और बाकी अलाइड चीज़ों के लिए टाटा सन्स ने एक कमिटमेंट किया है, करीब $11 बिलियन, $11 बिलियन का कमिटमेंट आज उन्होंने घोषित किया है इंटरनेशनल ऑडियंस के सामने। और आज हमने सारे इंटरनेशनल बिजनेसेस को करीब आज अलग अलग देशों के करीब 400 लोग थे, 400 से 500 लोग, उनके सामने हमने इसको आज लॉन्च किया है।
कि आजकल जो मुंबई का रीजन है उसका कंपटीशन स्टार्ट हो गया है आंध्र प्रदेश और चंद्रबाबू नायडू से। वो तो रेस में ही नहीं थे, ना 3 में ना 13 में, वो आगे रेस में और गूगल की बाजी लेके चले गए वहाँ पे।
देखिए, बहुत अच्छी बात है, क्योंकि हमारे देश में डेटा सेंटर की इकोसिस्टम को तैयार करना बहुत ज़रूरी है। देखिए, आने वाला जो समय है ये एक प्रकार से डेटा, एआई और सेमीकॉन, ये 3 चीज़ें डिटरमिन करने वाली है। और इसमें देश का कोई भी राज्य अगर कैपेबिलिटी तैयार करे तो हमने खुश होना चाहिए। चंद्रबाबू तो हमारे ही है, लेकिन अगर कोई समझ लीजिए कांग्रेस शासित राज्य भी है, अगर वो भी अगर ऐसी कैपेबिलिटी तैयार करता है तो हमको खुश होना चाहिए। लेकिन इसके साथ साथ मैं आपको वापस से बताना चाहता हूँ कि फॉर्चुनेटली हम लोगों ने जो डेटा सेंटर पॉलिसी तैयार की है, उस पॉलिसी को रिस्पॉन्ड करते हुए इतने बड़े पैमाने पर डेटा सेंटर का निवेश ये महाराष्ट्र में आया है। नाउ महाराष्ट्र इज डेटा सेंटर कैपिटल ऑफ इंडिया। अभी हम लोग डेटा सेंटर की जो कैपेसिटी तैयार हुई है या हो रही है उसके 60% अकेला महाराष्ट्र है।
क्या अचीव किया आपने डावोस आके? ये आपका डावोस डेब्यू है?
Yeah, for the first time Assam is here in Davos. पहले तो I try to understand what it is. कोई अच्छे सेशन में भी पार्टिसिपेट किए, that's one. There are many good event has been organized, especially for Assam. वो भी मेरे लिए फ़ायदेमंद हुए। पूरा दुनिया का जो सेमीकंडक्टर का इकोसिस्टम में जो लोग काम कर रहे हैं, जो कंपनियां काम कर रहे हैं, उनका साथ भी काफ़ी अच्छा मुलाकात हुए। अश्विनी जी भी साथ में रहे, यूनियन मिनिस्टर। और ऑफ कोर्स इतना सारे इंडिया का इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट आया है, ग्लोबल इन्वेस्टर्स भी आए हैं। तो आई थिंक वी ऑल्सो गॉट ए कन्फर्मेशन ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट अराउंड 1 लाख करोड़।
मैं देख रहा था कि आप असम में एक सेमीकंडक्टर इकोसिस्टम बनाने की शुरू करें, क्योंकि वहाँ पे तो टी, पेट्रोलियम, ये ट्रेडिशनल इंडस्ट्रीज हैं। अब सेमीकंडक्टर बनाने के लिए असम कोई क्यों आएगा?
पहले दिस इज ए बिग ब्रेक थ्रू। Assam is normally known for hydrocarbon, tea, Kaziranga, but Tata has decided to go and set up the first India semiconductor OSAT in Assam. अगले 2 महीना में प्रोडक्शन स्टार्ट हो जाएगा। जब इतना बड़ा इंडस्ट्री आते हैं और आप जानते हैं इट दिस इज ए इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑफ 30,000 करोड़, so many big players are involved there. So धीरे धीरे वो लोग भी चाहते हैं बिकॉज दैट इकोसिस्टम नीड्स कंटिन्यूअस सपोर्ट, केमिकल से लेकर मशीन से लेकर, सो ऑटोमेटिकली एक इकोसिस्टम बन जाते हैं। तो मेरा जो एफर्ट रहे, अगर एक के लिए एक इकोसिस्टम बना है, व्हाई नॉट सेकेंड ऑल्सो कम्स।
It's been a difficult year, and let's face it, safety has been a primary concern. We've had a horrific incident with Air India, AI-171. Indigo saw a system which some would suggest was overstretched at the level of the airline. But again, safety is your primary concern, more than economics. And you have undertaken a series of steps to ensure Number one, flight duty time limitations. Pilots and crew are not stressed out. How critical is it for us to ensure safety given the pace at which we are expanding?
It is not only critical, there shouldn't be any compromise when it comes to safety, and that is the attitude that we keep in civil aviation and the regulation that we do. Safety is of the topmost priority. No matter what we do, we talk about numbers, we talk about passengers, we talk about money, we talk about airports. Whatever we do is secondary. Safety and a secure way of traveling is the top priority, and these are the foundations and the pillars on which you have to build your civil aviation network, and that has been the priority. Based on that itself, we have been taking a lot of reforms. We want to ensure that the crew, that the pilots and all the people and the staff that are involved, they are adequately de-stressed, or their conditions of work conditions are all up to the global standards and up to the standards with which they have to be treated. And when I say that the challenges also, I just want to go back to the point that the nature of sector has changed. And simply being put as from exclusive, we have become a very inclusive. More and more people are becoming comfortable traveling through air. And it's come to the point, if you look at many of the airports today, you find all classes of people coming in. So when the network is growing at such a scale, then obviously the regulation should follow. In fact, it has to be going hand in hand, and that is one thing that we are proactively looking into it. Because as the numbers are growing, there has to be some changes in the policy also, and that is exactly how the airports should be for the future. So here one policy reform that we are trying to bring is that, see, when you talk about airports, it's always these mega structures that you're trying to build, long runways, huge terminals, and huge infrastructure capacity that you want to build. But that is not the way forward for us. What we are saying, see, we'll have the mega airports, which are metropolitan city airports. These are going to be the hubs. And then when you want to create the connectivity across the country, have medium airports, have smaller airports, have the spokes. So you don't need a big airport everywhere. You have to have club all these things. And likewise, when it comes to pilots, then we have changed the FDTL norms. So each and every vertical that is there in aviation, according to the growth story that India is witnessing, and it's going to witness in the future also, proper policy making has to be done, and at regular intervals. So we are pacing ourselves in that manner.
Second question, indirectly safety related, the number of pilots. We are growing at a speed in which we don't have enough pilots. We have junior pilots who need to become senior. We need to bring in junior pilots and ensure that they operate at the safest levels possible. Will Indigo or any other airline be able to induct pilots at the rate that is required for them to ensure that flight duty time limitations are met? I ask because Indigo was given a one-time dispensation that you can expand, you curtail the number of flights, but after February you have to ensure that you have pilots in place. Where will they get the pilots?
Again, an interesting question. One thing is that we have, I feel, adequate number of pilots. But the challenge here is getting them trained to be sitting in that specific plane. If you are flying an Airbus 320, then you need to have the type rating for that plane. If you are flying another kind of machine, then you need to be aptly trained in that plane. So the amount of hours it takes for them to actually get trained on that plane and be on the simulator, get the type rating, and if possible, if when they are becoming the captain in charge, then how many hours he has to do. That definitely, that whole concept requires a certain kind of work that needs to be done by the airlines also. And it is the responsibility of airlines. See, if I'm the airline, if I'm running 10 planes, how many pilots do I need? How do I get them inducted? It is the airline's responsibility. The government is setting the rules and the guidelines that if you want to have a pilot, then how much time should he be rested, and how do you want to utilize him? And proactively, what we are trying to do from the government is have more FTOs opened up. Training institutions which the pilots, which become the institutions to train the pilots. And after I've come, I've given permission for at least 8. And there is a lot more interest. And I'm also kind of creating that story that India needs more pilots, because imagine 1,700 planes coming in the next 15 years. And each plane roughly needs about 15 to 20 more pilots. Then how much are you creating, the demand that is being created? So you need to train your pilots at that pace. And coming to this this very specific situation of can Indigo reach it or not, I don't think it is an impossible task, but it has to be dealt with in the right manner, more than the looking at the economics of it. See, if you want to run your operations at that level, then you have to follow the FDTL and you have to have that adequate number of pilots.
Yeah.
If not, we have had the 10% curtailment of operations for now.
Yeah.
And I am using it as another advantage where this 10% curtailment of routes that we have done, we want to promote other airlines also. Is that not what we want?
Yeah, we want more airlines to prevent a duopoly or whatever it is.
When I first set out on this trip to cover World Economic Forum and Davos for NDTV Profit, the sense was that you, the viewer, should come along at every turn, at every nook and corner of this beautiful town. And that is what we have tried to do. From the new gadgets and gizmos lined up on the promenade, to the nightlife, to the food that is present, to all of the stalls that companies put up to show off that they have arrived. We captured the sights and sounds and flavors of Davos for you.